The panel discussion. Usually this is a discussion that happens at the end of all the interviews of the candidates. So you've talked to everybody. You've read all the questionnaires, ahead of time and during the meeting, and all the candidates have spoken. And so we usually do that an hour or two, and we usually go from like 9 o'clock to 11 o'clock. And so you have to have a place that'll let you meet until 11 o'clock. So we'd have our meetings from like 6:30 till 9, 2 nights, and then the last night from 9 to 11 we talk. And we don't allow any candidates in the room during our panel discussion, and there's no press that we allow there. That's kind of we close all the doors, and that's us. Okay, here's the instructions that I give panel members who are going to vote. They're all conservative. They've filled out a questionnaire, so we know they're conservative, either because we know them or they've filled this out and we don't have any reason to believe that they're not conservative. And these are the kind of instructions that I would recommend you give them, something like this. Just to say that we obviously cannot vote in a race where we don't have questions or interviews, any of the candidates, for information. So those races, we just say not enough information. And if we don't have personal information, we don't give any vote on those at all. But on the other races where we've got one or more contested candidates that have filled out questionnaires and or done the interviews, I tell them, I said, you guys are probably the most knowledgeable group of conservatives in this county to advise other conservatives on these races. So sometimes the panel members have a tendency not to vote if they don't know the candidate real well. And so I tell them, I said, hey, if you don't vote in this particular race tonight on this voter guide panel, because you don't have 100% of the information to make you feel comfortable, then you're really doing a disservice to the conservatives who need as much information as they can about candidates, because they'll have even less information than you have. You have at least some. And also to remember that there are conservative voters out there that think like us, and they need the best voter information that they can find and that we can provide them. If you vote, your name's going to go on the voter guide. And please don't vote for a person because you don't want to offend them or because you think they're going to win. Sometimes that still plays an effect on even our panel members. So just encourage them on that. And then I've got another page that you'll see here that has even more detailed instructions. Okay, the panel vote itself, we vote on two things. One is this candidate conservative? Yes or no? It's at one time we did rate how conservative this person is, slightly, very, medium, and it's really just from doing it several times, it's best yes or no. Are they conservative or not? People ask me, well, what do you mean conservative? I go, whatever your definition is, you're conservative, you're in here, we'll trust your definition. And it works out pretty good. One of the reasons why a percentage doesn't work out very well is because people are hesitant to put a 0 by a candidate who's not conservative, or 100 by a person who's really conservative. So it's best just to say conservative or not. The second thing we vote on is who is the best candidate in each race. And they can only pick one person. So have a voting sheet for the panel members prepared. Each person gets one vote that comes. We usually do secret ballots, but sometimes they haven't been secret ballots just for logistics reasons. And if you're going to have a secret ballot, then you've got to make you might want to consider making a unique word, have each panel member put a unique word on the sheet itself, so that if you look at their sheet, if they turned it in and you see they've only voted for 2 people out of 25, you say, hey, look, this one's not filled out good enough. Whoever it is needs to fill it out, and they'll know who it is by their mark. So check the ballots as they come in to make sure that people are not just checking off 1 or 2 races. If they spent the time in both meetings, listen to all the discussion, they really are pretty knowledgeable. And then put a deadline on voting. My favorite recommended way to do it is just to say, at 11 o'clock tonight, we're voting, and that's when you need to turn it in. And usually like one or two people had to leave early, something, and they're knowledgeable enough to vote, and they'll do it in a day or two later, which usually works out fine. How do you tally the panel vote? We express everything in percents. So if you've got 20 people on your panel, and then 15 of them vote in a particular race, and 5 didn't for whatever reason, 15 vote, and say that candidate A got 10 votes and candidate B got 5 votes. Well, candidate A has a 66% rating in that race, and candidate B has a 33% rating. So we express everything in percents, so how conservative they are. And you can have two people in the same race that are very conservative. So you might have two people that get 100% conservative rating, but then when it comes to the best candidate, that's whenever it gets boiled down to one. And in a place where you might have two people getting very conservative, you might have one candidate get 65% and one get 30%, something like that. Have a minimum number of votes in a race to report anything. So like if you've got 20 people on your panel and only 3 people or 5 people voted in a race, that's probably not enough information to vote in that race at all. So there's been a few times where we say not enough information in this vote to come up with percentages. We still put the information the candidate, the answers from the candidate, but we don't put our panel's vote. The voter guide itself. We put the voter guide on our website. It kind of recruits other conservatives to our group. Our website has the detailed questionnaire for each candidate, which usually is a page or two, and then we have our voter guide for those that want to do more research. And these detailed answers are available by the website for the panel members, so that's how one way we distribute the questionnaires to our panel ahead of time. In the voter guide itself, we only include contested races. It saves space. We don't even weigh in on uncontested races. We tend to bold those candidates who had the good scores, just to make it easier to see when voters are in a rush and going into the voting booth. On some of our essay questions, we will summarize some of the long answers, and we'll just pull out some of the key points, just because we can only fit so much on a page. And we filter out unnecessary questions in a race. If it's a certain race, there's some questions that really don't quite pertain, and they're not needed to distinguish between people in that race. It needs to be a one-page sheet, as I've said before. Front and back is okay. Pushcard version could be handy for the election day, but really the full voter guide with some details is generally helpful. Also put it in a PDF format so that you can email it easier, and it's easier to print out in the correct format. If there's room on the voter guide, we're going to put out early voting locations because there are so few locations. On election day, we don't put out the voter guide locations, the voting locations, because there's just too many to fit on the page. Another thing we do is we make a church version of the voter guide as well as a regular voter guide. The church version has our opinions of the panel's opinions removed, just so it'll stay 501c3 compliant. If there's a runoff election, then we just remove all the information that's not in the runoff, and we just kind of update the voter guide. We don't vote again, we don't convene again, we just take the same information, move it over, and hand it out again. And then we put some disclaimers on the voter guide, which I'll talk a little bit later on.